Preston Bailey with Smash Mouth Sports. With me, as always, Cambia. We are excited and honored to have, for the first time ever, Cody Davis, Texans reporter for the Texans Wire, and also the host of Locked and Loaded. I almost said Locked and Loaded. Is it Locked? My brain goes to Locked and Loaded Texans podcast. Right? Hopefully this podcast doesn't get derailed. But we're having you. Can you tell us a little bit about the podcast?
Yes, sir. I am I'm actually the co-host of Locked On Texans. I do the show with one of my best friends, Johnson, Sports Guy Hickman, and we host the podcast. And it's a daily podcast, Monday through Friday, every single day, talking about the Houston Texans. And ever since John and I took over the podcast, I believe in March of 2019, this team has always given us something to talk about, whether good or bad, happy or sad, smart or dumb. There's always something to talk about when you're covering the Houston Texans.
Absolutely. And I wish it was good news. I wish it was better news for you. But unfortunately, it's been a little rocky, to put it mildly. To put a bow on that, we're not going to go too deep in the whole saga because there's so much speculation, and with Twitter and social media, everybody's going totally buck wild. But I want to get into, from a trade perspective, if you're a Texans fan, what are your thoughts on it? Because it looked like a month ago they were turning down 3 first rounds, 4 first rounds. Now, obviously, with everything that's going on, you're a Texans fan. If you could get 2 first-round draft picks today for Deshaun Watson, would you just make this move and be done with it, or what is your take on that?
No, I would still hold on to him because Deshaun Watson is worth more than 2 first-round draft picks. Prior to everything, with everything that's going on with him right now, prior to that, I was under the impression that the Texans would be open to trading him for, let's say, multiple first-round draft picks, let's say 3 or 4, a starting caliber player and a young prospect. One of the trade package that I always talked about on Locked On Texans was Miami at the time. I was like, if you can give us 3 first-round draft picks, let's say Xavier Howard, one of their top defensive backs, and Tua, a lot of people said that was too much to ask for. But at the end of the day, you're talking about Deshaun Watson, who is at worst, the fourth best quarterback in the National Football League. So Deshaun Watson, you saw what he was able to do in 2020, and I'm pretty sure the Texans would have traded him if they would have gotten a package similar to that. Another package that I talk about was the San Francisco 49ers. I say, if you give us 3 first-round draft pick and Nick Bosa, I take that deal as well. And once again, Nick Bosa, that's still too much for Deshaun Watson. Once again, Deshaun Watson is at worst the 4th best quarterback in the league. Nick Bosa, you saw we just got rid of J.J. Watt. We had a plethora of defensive issues going on with this organization during the 2020 season, and Nick Bosa is and would have been that foundational piece. Now, given everything that's going on, I mean, I hate to say it, but Deshaun Watson trade value has diminished. And I am not sure that there will be a team out there who will be willing to give up that same trade package or something similar for Deshaun Watson now, because there's just too much uncertainty going on with everything surrounding him and his whole sexual allegation stuff.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points here. And unfortunately, you're right. It's plummeted. There's so much investigation. I know the NFL saying they don't comment on ongoing investigations. This is looking rough. There's a couple more that came through today. Now, that you brought up a lot of good points with Miami. I also thought that Miami made the most sense. They needed a quarterback for the future. Tua does not seem to be the guy. So in my mind, you're thinking you give up multiple first-round draft picks, 2, maybe 3, and you throw in Tua if you're Miami, and you get that deal done. You've got a pretty good team, and then the Texans can rebuild. So it's definitely – I don't know what the Houston Texans are doing. Cam, you want to jump in here and get a good question for Cody?
No, I agree with you guys. I thought Miami was the team that made the most sense from the very beginning. Either them or Carolina. He goes back home, and they send you guys a ton of picks and Christian McCaffrey. I think that was in the package I heard. Mm-hmm. Cody, what I want to ask you about Houston is this Jack Easterby guy. He was with the Patriots, my team, the Patriots here. He was actually the team chaplain, I believe. Mm-hmm. Here, he got released from the team at the ring ceremony after Super Bowl 53. And now all of a sudden he's gone from team chaplain with the Patriots to team president with the Texans. And he's carved out a ton of power there. He was the mastermind behind the DeAndre Hopkins trade, why J.J. Watt wanted out, and why Deshaun Watson wants out. How did this guy get so much power?
To be honest with you, Nobody knows. And we have been trying for the longest to see what is the deal with Jack Easterby. And if I'm not mistaken, he isn't the team president. I believe he's like vice president or somewhere along those lines. I don't want to get his title wrong, but the Jack Easterby situation is very strange because I'm pretty sure you guys know there has been a lot of negatives that have came out going on surrounding the Texans organization and Easterby. And we have had the opportunity to ask Cal McNair multiple times, what is Jack Easterby's role? One, why is he still on this team? Two, it seems like he has created this dark cloud over the organization. And with you being the CEO and you being part of ownership, why are you having this, I hate to say it, cancer hurt your organization? And he can never give us a straight answer. One of my favorite moments I would like to go back to, the local sports reporter here for KPRC Houston, her name is Vanessa Richardson, and she asked Cal McNair during the introduction of Nick Caserio as the general manager. She asked Cal McNair straight up, can you name one quality, not two, not three, not four, not five, one trait, one quality that is worth keeping Jack Easterby around? And McNair could not answer the question. It was very telling. I don't know if, you know, me and John, we joke about this all the time. Maybe Easterby has some type of dirt on Cal McNair where if he gets fired, he will blast McNair out for some type of dirt. We don't know, but it's very weird. It's very odd how you as part of ownership would allow someone to just derail your organization, because something I always go back to, it just baffles me. If we go back a year or 2 years, this organization had a lot of promise. I mean, you're talking about a team in the Texans who we thought we was going to be able to challenge Baltimore and Kansas City to represent the AFC championship, to represent the AFC in one of these upcoming Super Bowls. You know, you have Deshaun Watson, you have one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the game. Of course, we know what JJ Watt is. You finally had an opportunity to get him some help. And within a blink of an eye, everything just disintegrated. And at the time, we thought the number one villain was Bill O'Brien, but now it seemed like that villain was now Jack Easterby. So it's just a really strange situation right now. He's staying out of the limelight. I don't know if it's because there's another issue surrounding this organization as part of the reason why Easterby name hasn't been coming up as much. But if you ask me, man, nobody knows, and it's just weird.
Cody, I'm going to ask you an insane question. Try not to do a backflip. You put a great point that many people thought that Bill O'Brien was the problem to the organization, because I believe you're up 24-0 against the Chiefs. I tell this to Cam all the time. The team literally could have just ran the ball 3 times, in my opinion, and punted, and they would have done better than how it ended up in the second quarter. Because once they went for it on that 4th down, that special teams debacle and all the insanity, things that went totally off the rails. With all the insanity that has happened within the last 2 years, would you consider welcoming Bill O'Brien back if somehow they were to mend that, or you're done with him 100%?
I wouldn't welcome him back. It's just too much that went on with Bill O'Brien. And to be honest with you, outside of the game against Kansas City, I did not have a problem with Bill O'Brien, the head coach, because I always looked at it as, you know, he might have been the most winning coach in franchise history. And he took us to the playoffs almost every single year. In the years that we did not make it to the playoffs, it was due to injuries. I mean, we had times where Deshaun Watson, JJ Watt, Lamar Miller, like everybody was hurt across the board. And I always say, when your team is hurt and you're playing with a developmental team out on the field, out on the court, it doesn't matter who your coach is, you're not going to win. And it's funny because we saw the same exact thing happen with the other franchise in Houston, with the Houston Rockets. That's part of the reason why they dropped 20 straight games in a row. However, going back to the Texans and Bill O'Brien, I did not have a problem with Bill O'Brien, the coach. However, I did have a problem with Bill O'Brien, the general manager, because a lot of the deals that he made, you could have got either more, or there was no need to depart from that particular player, i.e. the Jadeveon Clowney situation. You know, when I got the news that the Texans had traded Jadeveon Clowney, to see what you got back in return, especially a player in Jacob Martin, who I believe could be a type of player, but you flipped him for a guy who every single year has gotten lost in a rotation. That's part of the reason why we have not seen Jacob Martin in the rotation. And then of course everybody's favorite or most hated move is when he departed from DeAndre Hopkins. And one of the reasons why he departed from D-Hop is when he said, you know, everyone knew that you was going to have to pay Deshaun Watson, but the receivers that you brought in, you end up spending even more money by trading the D-Hop. If you would have just kept him, gave him his contract extension, which that was part of the reason why he claimed he got rid of him. Him as a general manager, that was basically the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I agree. You made a lot of good points here. What's fascinating is people are killing Bill O'Brien, as they should. He did a terrible job as general manager. But if you look at it objectively, not with an emotional thing, which is hard for sports fans to do, he did build a great team as far as Watson and Hopkins and Watt and all of the other pieces. And then it's almost as like once he let Clowney go, it was almost like a starting of this piece. He felt a little too casual and cavalier with letting guys go. And then, of course, when you let a guy like DeAndre Hopkins walk out the building, as far as I'm concerned, it's basically nothing. It was a second-round pick and David Johnson. I mean, to not get multiple first and to not get any kind of collateral, it's really sucks. There's no nice way to put it for Houston because they don't have a first-round pick. They've got a rough salary situation. How can your team – how can they rebound? You know, with the Watson thing, nothing looks positive. So let's try to get some positivity. What is the positive you see in the next couple of years? How can they rebuild this ship?
Well, the first positive is, and possibly the most important positive, is now that you have a real general manager in the office. Nick Caserio has done a phenomenal job, and I say this a lot, almost every single day on Locked On Texans. He might not have been the general manager that we wanted, but he is definitely the general manager that the Texans needed. This is a guy who took the Texans from being a negative $20 million in the hole to now they're on a positive side of the salary cap space. Not only that, everyone knew that, okay, it's free agency. You was able to free up some money. But given the situation that's going on with Jack Easterby and now with Deshaun Watson, what type of free agents are you going to bring into this organization to help at least put together a respectable and competitive team heading into the 2021 season? What does he go out and do? Because the salary cap was lower and he knew there was going to be a lot of guys taking 1 or 2 year deals to prove their worth in order to cash in on their on when the NFL decides to upgrade their salary cap space with the new TV deal that's coming. He went out and got those low tier yet quality players like a Phillip Lindsay, like a Chris Conley, like a Jordan Jenkins. He went out and got these guys who, if things go right, you are at least talking about a team that's going to be competitive and respectable throughout the 2021 season. Now, looking beyond the 2021 season, I'm pretty sure there might be a couple of guys like the three I just named, if they were able to live up to the hype that and the expectations that we have here in Houston. I'm pretty sure you might be able to bring them back on a clear deal. However, the future of this organization revolves around one man. And of course, that one man goes back to Deshaun Watson. We don't know what's going to happen with him, especially with this unfortunate situation that's surrounding him right now. If you are able to trade him and get a haul back like you would have if you would have traded him when he first requested a trade, then yeah, the future of the Houston Texans still look bright. But if you are forced to trade him for a bag of peanuts, then yeah, you screwed up in that aspect. And then I really don't know how this will work now, given everything that's going on, but maybe Deshaun Watson might have a change of heart and say, you know what, maybe I want to continue my career in Houston. And of course, if he does that, then you still have your franchise quarterback moving forward. But that seemed like a far stretch.
Yeah, you made a lot of great points there. What's crazy, and I hate to say this, it's almost as if the Houston Texans could not have done any worse in this offseason. It was like every step of the way, let's make this move. No, we're going to make the other move. It's like they didn't work with Deshaun Watson, and then they didn't trade him. It's like, man, like every single time they're just getting this wrong. So By the way, two-part question. Do you guys I was just looking. Do you guys have any second-round picks either? I was just giving a quick glance. It didn't look like any. I was like, did I miss that? So you don't have a first or a second?
No, sir.
I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a team, I hate to say this, with no first, no second, and your quarterback is in the rockiest situation. I mean, I don't know who you got, the reverend or whoever it was, the chaplain. I don't know if he made some bad deals or something went wrong. But, I mean, you guys, it sounds like the Houston Texans need to go to church here. So I don't know about that. But what is the biggest need for the Texans, assuming that you can, get through this Watson situation and he can kind of manage that situation, even if you guys take a huge hit for a year for the future? Is it O-line? Is it receivers? Is it tight end? What's the biggest overall need from a unit standpoint?
In my opinion, and yes, we don't have a first or second round draft pick. We do not pick until number 67 in the third round. However, with that being said, when I take a look at what the Texans need to address, looking at the draft, I don't care what direction they go. They need to make sure they upgrade that secondary. As we know, this secondary was terrible in 2020, possibly the worst, if not one of the worst secondaries in NFL histories. And as a matter of fact, they did have one of the worst defensive teams in NFL history. You could go corner, you could go safety. I don't care which way they go, as long as they draft one of the top defensive backs in this year's draft, I would be okay, because this secondary definitely need help. The defensive line, that need help too, but you still have a young stud in Ross Blacklock. You still have a guy like Charles Omenihu, who is going into, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his third year, and he showed some promise last season as well. So the defensive line, you can kind of like wait on that, maybe try to get one in the fourth or the fifth round, but your very first pick, the Texans' very first pick, needs to be a defensive back.
Cam, what are your thoughts on that? You like that pick, defensive back?
No, that's absolutely Houston's biggest need. I mean, my team, the Patriots, played them last year, and Cam Newton probably had his best passing game of the season, which is not saying a lot, but it was one of his better games of the year. So two-part question here. David Culley, new head coach, and from the looks of things right now, it looks like Tyrod Taylor is going to be your week one starting quarterback, whether Watson's traded or not. We'll see what happens there. What are your expectations from your new head coach and your new quarterback?
Well, starting with David Culley, to be honest with you, I don't know, because this is a guy who has never been a coordinator. And this is a guy, when you look back at his track record, he does not have that great of a track record when you look at when he was the quarterback coach here, the wide receiver coach here. Even, he came from Baltimore. It seems like everywhere he went, either that team, especially in passing, there was always towards the bottom. If not, they had the worst passing game in the league. Everybody loves to talk about the terrible job he did in Kansas City. I believe there was a year, I can't remember what year. I want to say either 2014 or 2015, when none of their wide receivers scored a touchdown. And that was on the time when Alex Smith was their quarterback. And I'm like, how do you go an entire season when none of your receivers score a touchdown, and he was their receiver coach at the time? So with David Culley,
I did not know that. What year was that, dude? Wow, that's horrendous. I mean, I'm
not sure. Like I say, either had to be 2015 or 2016. It was somewhere in the mid 2010s. That's all I can remember.
5 years ago, no receiver had a touchdown. Nobody.
Yes.
Not even a four-string receiver catching an accidental busted coverage. I mean, that is brutal.
Yeah, it was crazy. But what I would say about David Culley, and the only bright spot that I do see in this is, one, I do believe that he has the respect of his team right now. And we all know how important it is to have the respect of your locker room. As a matter of fact, early on in the day, we had the opportunity to talk to Mark Ingram, who worked with David Culley during his time with the Baltimore Ravens. And he said that he has a lot of respect and admiration for David Culley. And that's part of the reason why he chose to come to Houston, because he wanted to reunite with David Culley. And a new receiver that the Texans had just signed, and Chris Conley, he actually said the same thing. Now, he worked with David Culley during his time as the wide receiver coach in Kansas City. It wasn't the year when none of them caught touchdowns, by the way.
Right.
But he also said, given his respect and admiration for Culley, he wanted to reunite with him. So it seems like from that standpoint, David Culley, because he has the respect of his locker room as of right now, then maybe that's a positive. But once you start talking about coaching philosophies, once you start talking about how is he going to put his players in a position to have success on the field every single Sunday, remember, this is a guy who has never been a coordinator. And yes, I understand that is not the most important thing when you look at head coaches across the NFL, but you want some type of track record to say when he was over X, Y, and Z, this is how successful or this is how bad that team was. And David Culley, unfortunately, does not have that. As for Tyrod Taylor, look, first and foremost, I have to admit, it hurts my soul for us to go from Deshaun Watson to Tyrod Taylor in a span of 4 to 5 months. That hurts. However,
Absolutely. Sure.
When I take a look at Tyrod Taylor, I do have some expectations for him. One, I don't believe that Taylor is a scrub. It's just he's been dealt a bad hand over the last couple of years. I mean, it seems like ever since he left Buffalo, he always seemed like he was in a position to be a bridge quarterback. As we know, in Cleveland, I think he made like one mistake and then they benched him for Baker Mayfield. He goes to Los Angeles the first year. He played behind Phillip Rivers. Then after that, he was playing in front of Justin Herbert. And then all of a sudden, Justin Herbert had this little, not Justin Herbert, but all of a sudden, Tyrod Taylor had this weird injury that nobody knows what happened.
Sure.
Then he gets benched for Justin Herbert. Then Justin Herbert takes the spot. The only thing I would say about Tyrod Taylor, I think we will finally see. He will finally have an opportunity to prove to not only himself, but prove to the NFL that he still has what it takes to be a starting caliber quarterback in this league. And Absolutely. Going back to the David Culley side of things, he actually had one of his best seasons with David Culley when he was with the Buffalo Bills. I believe David Culley was his quarterback coach, and he threw for almost 3,000 yards. It was one of his best seasons of his career. So,
Absolutely.
I'm not expecting.
Definitely. No, that's a good point, Cody. Let me cut you off here. We just had Kevin Hickey jump in here. We appreciate that. We didn't want to forget about him. So we're just wrapping up with Cody. So I know we had you for about 20 minutes or so. So we'll go to Kevin here in just a moment. So Cody, kind of give your final thoughts here. This will kind of lead us into Indy. But would you be warm to bringing back Jadeveon Clowney in Houston? Is that something that you guys are open to, or is that because I don't believe you signed yet?
Oh, no. But what's funny, we actually just talked about the same exact scenario. Me and my co-host John on Locked On Texans for our Wednesday installment. And, we say, look, at this point, Jadeveon Clowney need the Texans just as much the Texans need Jadeveon because, like I mentioned, Nick Caserio has done a great job getting those low-tier caliber free agents that a little bit of the league probably gave up on, and they just need to prove their worth. And that is where Jadeveon Clowney needs right now. I mean, first and foremost, this man has not really been relevant ever since he walked out the door off of 6'10" and Kirby when Bill O'Brien forced him out with a trade. He goes to Seattle, he gets hurt. He goes to Tennessee, he gets hurt. And now it's just like, okay, when healthy, he is still proven to be, one of a quality defensive end. And that's what the Texans need, especially someone who can defend the run. And Jadeveon Clowney, no matter if it was Houston, Seattle, or Tennessee, he's always been that type of player who excels at stopping the run.
Absolutely. Well, Cody, great take. We appreciate you calling in. We're gonna let you go now. We're gonna hand the ball off to Kevin. We're gonna let Kevin run with it. So, Cody, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Cody.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Kevin. So we're glad to have you on. We appreciate you having on. So I was surprised Cody had a lot of excitement for the Houston Texans. Of course, he's a Texans writer, but I was, we try to keep it high level and not to go too far in the ditch. But I was surprised. It's good that you're, as a fan, as a writer of the team, you're excited about your team. So tell me, you're with the Colts wire. Is there a lot of optimism in the offseason, signing Carson Wentz, getting some of the band together and so forth? Or what is your thoughts on that?
It's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh man, so you're the opposite of Houston. Houston was roses and rainbows with the sky falling. You guys are on the upswing, but you're moderate, right?
It's hard to kind of gauge exactly where the fan base is at. You have a group who they are optimistic about Carson Wentz. They're optimistic that Frank Reich can get him back to maybe not his MVP level form that he was in 2017, but get him to a stable, area where he was in maybe 2018, 2019, just to a point where he can keep the offense going and not necessarily be a detriment as he was in 2020. Then you have another faction of Colts fans who feel it might be a little difficult given what he showed in 2020, the issues that arose just from a mechanic standpoint, a mentality standpoint. You really saw a different quarterback in 2020. So I tried to be a little more optimistic. In nature, I'm a bit more optimistic just as a person. So I'm willing to see that side where, you get his mechanics fixed, you get his mindset fixed, get him more comfortable in the pocket. You have a better offensive line in Indy. I can see where he starts to become a more competent quarterback. But it's not all roses. A lot of people have questions. I have questions about whether he can return to form. So it's not all roses, but there is optimism.
Okay, well, that's good that there's some optimism there. I mean, realistically, you guys had a good season last year with Philip Rivers. I believe Carson Wentz is an upgrade. And I believe, like you said, I mean, I know a lot of people are just piling on Carson Wentz. I piled on Carson Wentz a little bit myself because he seems to be a little prima donna at times. I did one video a few months ago. I called him Prince Wentz because he kind of looks a little bit like Prince Harry. So
he looks a lot like him.
Yeah, it looks a lot like him. So I don't think your average person could tell the difference unless they were either a Royal fan or a sports fan. So I do think if he's healthy with the great offensive line you have, with the running game, you brought back T.Y., you've got some good receivers. I do think in your defense, what did you make? What was interesting, your linebacker, Darius Leonard, in his comments about Deshaun Watson, we don't have to go too deep into it, but did you read those comments? That he said ESPN is killing Deshaun Watson. What do you have a take on that one way or the other?
I don't necessarily have a take on it. I try not to get too deep into these kind of things because, one, we don't have all the information. And when we don't have all the information, I feel like that's a lot of times where people can get in trouble. But, it's kind of a sad situation to see that, so in my opinion, Deshaun Watson's somebody that I think that we all, we like to believe that he's one of the good guys off the field, he's kind of one of those guys that set an example, how to be a young quarterback in the NFL, how to carry yourself, how to, really go about being successful in the league, both on and off the field. So, Darius is going to say what Darius wants to say. I'm not going to say whether I agree or disagree. I don't have all the information. I know the whole case is really right in the middle of it right now. You know what I mean? Because you got both lawyers kind of firing back and forth. So I don't really have a comment on either side until we get more information. But yeah, I did see the tweet, and I will say that there were a lot of fans who at least on Twitter, kind of took a little bit of exception to it, just because we're kind of in this age where it's important to hear out stories. It's important to it's a tough thing for women to come forward with. So I understand where they were coming from in terms of this isn't necessarily a big media issue. It's a story that we have to listen to and try to understand once we get all the information.
Yeah, it's a sad story. And, I really like Deshaun Watson. Like you said, I had no idea that he had this whole alternate, thing going on. And like you said, that the case is still – I mean, I personally met him. I was so excited, when I met him 5 years ago when he was down here in Tampa for the national championship game. I was, when he was at Clemson. So I met him. Mm-hmm. I met him at church. I had a friend of mine invited me, and I met him at church. I was like, oh, this is a great guy. Shook his hand. He seemed like the most clean-cut, all-American guy, and this is a whole thing, which we're not going to go into, sad story. But let's, as they say, on to Cincinnati. Let's get on to Indy. Cam, you want to change things up and ask a good question here with Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin, I want to ask you the job Chris Ballard's done since he got to Indy, really, because you can't mince words. Ryan Grigson left you guys in chaos. Ryan Grigson is probably the number one person responsible for the demise of Andrew Luck's career.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Well, that's a harsh statement, and you agree with that, Kevin?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, obviously, you have a whole lot of factors, but when you have a quarterback of Andrew Luck's caliber, when you have a number one overall pick who is touted as the greatest quarterback prospect since Peyton Manning, it's a bit baffling to not build around him, especially on the offensive line. So, there are a lot of questions about that, and I certainly. would agree to an extent that Ryan Grigson played a very strong role in Andrew Luck's eventual deterioration.
What's bizarre now is you guys have such a great offensive line, you have such a great defense, and where was that with Andrew Luck? I'm sure the fans were a little salty. I like the way that they ended that with Andrew Luck's career. I thought was terrible during a preseason game, and they made the announcement. I mean, I know you're closer to this than I am, but just from a fan perspective, from a curiosity standpoint, do you know behind the scenes on why Andrew Luck did not just sit out a year, kind of like Gronk did? I know it's quarterback. I know it's not even close to the same. Sit out for a year, re-heal your body, and then come back for one more year with Nelson and try to give it one last shot. Did you have any kind of inkling on why he did not give it one last shot?
I don't have any inside information in terms of, stuff that hasn't already been reported, but it's definitely an interesting question. It's, because we've seen it happen all the time. Guys get worn down, guys get beat down, and they need to take some time. The like you said, the most recent example was Gronk, and he comes back. It might have taken him a couple of weeks, but he wound up making an impact for the Bucs. You know what I mean? So, I think with Andrew Luck's case, and I would never hold this against an athlete, especially being an athlete. I'm a former athlete myself. I played baseball, so it was a little bit different physicality wise, but I think everybody would agree that Andrew Luck's passions don't start and end with football. I think everybody would agree that he's not a guy that's going to kind of pigeonhole himself in that regard. So he's going to have other interests. He's going to want to do other things in his life. He had just gotten married, just had a kid. So I think those things, I don't know for sure. This is pure speculation. Maybe those things started to take a little bit of a priority. Maybe he really wasn't feeling himself. Maybe he was, again, speculation. Maybe he was feeling a bit depressed. He's in this constant cycle of injury, getting healthy, injury, getting healthy, and that takes a toll. It really does. It takes a toll mentally. And if you don't want to be at the field, if you don't want to be there, football is a very tough game to play. So I don't necessarily hold it against him at all. In my opinion, it's a brave choice because it's a choice that not everybody's going to agree with, and a lot of people are going to come down hard on you, and they did. So no, I don't have any inside information, but that's probably what I would say. I would say just mentally he got so worn down that it just got to the point where football wasn't fun anymore. If football's not fun, there's no reason to play it.
Absolutely. Cam, you got a question?
I want to ask Frank Reich. Obviously, there's a connection here because you guys initially had planned to hire Josh McDaniels. I'm a Patriots fan, our offensive coordinator. We don't know what happened here. All of a sudden, McDaniels backs out. You wind up hiring Frank Reich from Philadelphia, and he comes in, and it feels like he's turned that thing around. I know year one was rough with Luck walking out the door, but he's turned that thing around big time down there. Do you feel like you actually wound up being better with Reich than you would have been with McDaniels?
I would have to say yes, and I think I wrote an article about that. It was like the 1 year anniversary or whatever that McDaniels kind of backed out or just didn't go through with the agreed deal. I would have to say yes because the way that Frank Reich is able to run his team lines up very well with how Chris Ballard wants to run the team. So, and Chris Ballard has said it in interviews. Afterwards, he's like, "Man, how is this guy not on my top list of candidates?" So when you talk about what Frank Reich means to the organization and how he's able to build that culture, they've been able to go hand in hand, him and Chris Ballard. So, when you talk about the development of players, when you talk about his success and ability to get the most out of the quarterback room, it's been huge. So yeah, I'd have to agree that he's probably been the better option over McDaniels, even though, at the time, one might have argued that McDaniels was the better offensive mind. I think Reich has done well enough to prove that he's the right guy for the job.
Nobody likes Josh McDaniels anymore. His stock is plummeting.
I'm actually a Giants fan at heart, so it's very easy for me to not like the Patriots.
There we go. Absolutely. See, Cam, nobody likes the Patriots. He doesn't believe me that outside of the New England bubble, the New England insanity, When he came in here to Tampa a couple years ago, this is when the Patriots were still riding high.
Yeah.
Going over to Burns Steakhouse. I thought he was going to get in a bare knuckle fight with the guy that was joking around. I was like, take it easy. Let's don't charge people. Start uppercutting people with wine bottles and stuff. Everybody's going to have their opinion. Kevin, we appreciate you coming on. We got you for a couple more minutes here. I want to get into the draft. I don't know if you've studied it deeply, but it's hard. You guys are 21st overall, if I'm not mistaken. I can't say, hey, who are you going to pick at 21? Because I feel like once you're outside the top 10, with the exception of it's a crapshoot, with the exception of a team that's like picking in the bottom. So Tampa Bay, Kansas City, obviously they could pick a running back or potentially or Pittsburgh. Good teams. Typically, the top 3 or 4 running backs do tend to fall late in the first round. What position? Let's talk about a position of need that you feel that you need and would have the most immediate impact for the Colts to get over that hump, get to the AFC Championship game, and go deeper against the Chiefs and the Ravens and all the other teams. And, of course, that other team in New England that thinks they might come back.
It's a good question, and it's one that we thought might have been addressed earlier in the offseason. The Colts, as we, us in Indy, well, I mean, I'm not in Indy, I'm in South Carolina, but, in the Indy network,
sure.
We know that Chris Ballard is going to operate very lightly in free agency. He'll make some moves here and there, but he's not going to go out and sign a big defensive end for, a max contract or anything like that. I would probably say their biggest need, if you're just talking strictly in terms of need, it's edge rusher. They have a lot of young, unproven guys. Justin Houston's on the market right now. And even though, it'd be nice to probably bring him back for some stability, his 2020 season wasn't anything that would be all that impactful. So right now you got a couple young guys in Kamoko Toure, Ben Bannig.
Right. Cam, are you there? Yep.
They just re-signed Al-Qadim Muhammad. Am I here?
I think you might have frozen. Yeah, sorry. I think you might have. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I think you might have frozen there for a minute.
I've frozen. Yeah, I've frozen a couple times.
Is Carson Wentz at the front? Is Carson Wentz at the front door? He heard we were joking around. And
he's knocking on my front door. He's making my dogs go crazy.
There you go. No, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so it's edge rusher for me.
Edge rusher,
I think
because I've always liked the Colts because I'm in Tampa here. I forgot my Bucks hat. I was in such a fight. I was fighting my own cats and dogs over here in Tampa. So rented the house. Normally got my Bucks hat on. But what's interesting is that I've always followed the Colts because of Tony Dungy. How he was doing there. Obviously, he did a great job there. It doesn't feel like the Colts have really done a good job of getting those edge rushers. Once Freeney and Mathis, getting those elite, super elite. You had guys that are solid, but that's super elite. And I don't want to put a guy like Jadeveon Clowney in a super elite. He's got the size and all the boxes you check. Would you consider maybe overpaying or slightly overpaying for a guy like a Clowney to come in for a year? Is that something that a piece like that?
So that's very interesting that you bring that up because this kind of whole offseason, us as writers, we kind of, as a collective, understand, Ballard's not going to overpay, even if it means getting a guy like, a guy that I thought would have made a huge impact right away. You could have gone after a Yannick Ngakoue. I thought that would have been a great fit. Bud Dupree would have been a great fit. Shaq Barrett, if he hit the market, but he didn't. And then you got guys like Carl Lawson and Romeo Okwara. Those were kind of the big four that we thought were, hey, go spend a little money, make sure you solidify the edge, and really make sure that that's not a weakness, because if that's a weakness, you got a problem. So I would absolutely agree. They have not had that elite edge rusher. They found a good guy in DeForest Buckner, but he's an interior guy. I would argue that he's elite, but he's interior. So
he is elite and he is interior, and you had to trade for him too. So there's a lot,
Right. So my view is, they have not found that elite edge rusher. They have some promising players. Kamoko Toure was a guy in 2018. He's a bendy guy. He uses his speed. He shows flashes, but hasn't put together a full season. Ben Banigou barely played last year at all. So, and I know there's some things in the work with him. There's a lot of hope that he's going to kind of take that next step, in 2021. But they have not, ever since Chris Ballard took over, they have not hit on that edge rusher. So that's something that's going to be very important. It's going to be tough for them because the 2021 class, there's no Chase Young.
It's not.
There's no guy that is going to be a hit right away. Right.
Now, here's what's interesting. I don't say this to be insulting, but I always feel there's a lot of similarities between Green Bay and Indy. They're stable organizations. Somehow, they've managed to both have massive MVP caliber quarterbacks back to back with Favre and Rodgers, and of course Manning and Luck. But it's almost as if they're way too conservative. It's almost as if they're content with 8, 9, 10, 9, 10 wins, maybe 11 wins if things get lucky. But I almost feel like the NFL is changing, because even the crazy New England Patriots that are supposed to be the cheapest organization, they went out and spent $200 million. So I honestly feel all right, rein it in over there. The days of trying to win a championship on chicken wire and duct tape, those days are gone. The Bucs brought back the whole band together, which hasn't been done. So I almost feel like you guys have got to kind of, hate to say it, risk it for the biscuit. And you kind of got to go out and get one of these, Matthew Judons, get a Shaq Barrett, say, hey, call Shaq Barrett, say, look, you signed for 18 million. Look, we'll give you 20. We'll give you 21. You've almost got to, because, and I say this because I don't mean to be disrespectful, but Indy and Green Bay, to your average NFL free agent, they're not seeing those as markets like Tampa or Miami or LA. They're not like exploding. They're Midwest, easygoing towns, which is great, but your average free agent is not salivating for those types of markets. Do you sense that, or what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of hit it on the head in terms of, if a team's offering Shaq Barrett 18, why not give him 20? But that's just something that Chris Ballard, he just doesn't do it. He just says, you know what, we got a price point on this guy. This is what we think we're valued at. We're not going over it. So I think it's kind of,
Sounds very
I think it might bite them, in the back a little bit. You miss out on some really good players, but they're not a team that's going to change their ways right now. They're still building through the draft. They're gonna plug some needs in free agency, depth pieces, but they're a team that feels that if you draft well, and you develop and you reward your own, you're going to be just fine. So, I think that I would like to see them put a little more emphasis on the edge rusher position. I think there are a couple guys they could have drafted a couple years ago that might have helped them. But at this point, Ballard has had such good drafts that it's really hard to question him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit up here and say that, he should have drafted this guy, he should have drafted this guy, because he's doing a really good job. So I tend to agree with you that, I think there needs to come a point where we say, you know what, let's just kind of go all in on this one guy and really make sure that we get an edge rusher piece. And they weren't able to do that this offseason. There's an argument that they have a lot of extensions coming up with Darius Leonard, with Braden Smith, their right tackle, with Quentin Nelson. So, I feel like that they feel that may have hindered them in their ability to really go out and get a big edge rusher like Romeo Okwara or Carl Lawson. But I think soon enough you're going to start to see, a lot of people are going to be calling for, let's go get somebody. Let's go. If we got to overpay a little bit, let's overpay a little bit to make sure that we get, an elite talent on the edge, because right now that's their biggest need, and they're not going to come even close to the AFC Championship if they don't have an edge rush.
Right. I mean, you can get by, in my opinion, on lower tier running backs, receivers, and plug and play guys. Edge rushers are always going to be at a premium. These guys you're always going to, 19, 20 million yards plus, the Khalil Macks and so forth. And you're right. You did trade for DeForest Buckner. He is a phenomenal league player here. Let's get Cam in here. I see he's bursting at the seams. He wants to brag, I think, about the Patriots coming back. So let's hear it. Let's hear a good question.
No, we got to see what happens on the field first. Not brag, but this question does pertain actually to all three of our teams.
Okay.
Last year, you guys go out and sign Phillip Rivers on a one-year deal. Yeah. And I know Frank Reich had a prior relationship with Phillip Rivers. He was with him in San Diego for a couple of years before Frank Reich went to Philly with Doug Peterson. Mm-hmm. When free agency began last year, I said to Preston, the number one team that makes sense for Tom Brady was the Colts. Now, granted, I don't know how realistic this was because Brady wanted some off-the-field stuff. He wanted to live in a warm city. But you guys didn't even try. Brady had two offers from the Bucs and Chargers. Do you think they should have went after him? Like, what do you think happened?
I wouldn't say they didn't try. There have been reports, Frank Reich, I don't know what they offered him. They didn't say what they've offered him. They did say that they looked into going after him. I don't know how intense it was in terms of like, all right, I think it was once Phillip Rivers hit the market, Frank Reich was sold. That was his guy. That's the guy he wanted. And they kind of just said, you know what, let's just go get him. So Tom, I thought it would have been interesting if Tom Brady would have signed with the Colts, just because given the history with the whole Deflategate and everything. So I don't even know if that would have been on his radar, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I don't know.
You're trying to upset Kevin here, Cam, and me at the same time. You're doing a good job of that. I mean, you insulted his team. You're taking away my guy here. No.
Yeah, I mean, I know they had interest. I just don't know how much interest, because I know they did their homework. Frank Reich said he was very much in the conversation, but I think once they really started to watch Phillip Rivers, they realized that his 2019 wasn't as bad as everybody thought, wasn't as bad as they thought. So, and like you said, that past relationship with Frank Reich really kind of solidified their standing and wanting to get Phillip Rivers. So I'd say it just came down to that.
How would Colts fans, do you think it would have taken, if this had happened, how would Colts fans have welcomed him between, like you said, the Flakegate, the rivalry with Manning? Would the fans have accepted him?
In the offseason, probably not, but once you start winning games, yeah. I mean, come on, the guys, it's Tom Brady. What are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Cam, were you drinking Jack Daniels last year? Of course they would have been thrilled. Look, no disrespect to Phillip Rivers. He's a nice guy, good church-going man with his 14, 18, 28 kids. I don't know how many kids he's got. I think it's like 8. But let's be real. Phillip Rivers, I mean, he played well, all things considered, but considering he had a great offensive line and everything else was checked off, in my opinion, Rivers should have had a much better season than he had, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I thought he had a really good season. I thought he was very good.
He did have a good season.
Expectations. He had
their biggest problem was the pass rush. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But if we're comparing Phillip Rivers to Tom Brady, I'm probably taking Brady.
Of course.
Last year. So, I mean, I think they proved that too when he was with the Bucs.
But no, I'd say this. I feel, if I'm a Colts fan, I feel much better about the future with Carson Wentz than having Phillip Rivers or these other guys. Because, people have been killing Carson Wentz, but I do have to say this. Philly's offensive line sucked last year. We have terrible. To be honest, because I know people were, drinking Jack Daniels and getting themselves all frothed up. Jalen Hurts had one marginal game, and he won one game. And he was also sacked a lot. So, I mean, his offensive line was terrible. His receivers were not that good. I know they had a couple good tight ends, but they were banged up. So the tight end for the Colts has slipped me right now. Who's their top tight end?
Right now it's Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle is going to be the guy. Yeah. And then
for some reason I thought they signed a second guy. That was a higher tier guy.
No. We wanted them. The guy I was pounding the table for all offseason was Jonnu Smith, and then the Patriots come in and offer him $50 million, and that's just like the Colts are not going to sign him for that much money. As much as I love Jonnu Smith, that just wasn't going to happen. But no, right now it's Jack Doyle. It's Mo Alley Cox, who's kind of this freak athlete, size, speed kind of guy that they're trying to develop into a route runner. And he's starting to make some progress, but he's not there yet to where he can play more than 30% of the snaps. So I know that Frank Reich really values the tight end position. We saw it in Philly. We saw it in San Diego during his time with the Chargers. But they haven't had that difference maker. And I'm kind of hoping they start to add that, because I think that could be big for Carson Wentz. It's going to help him in the middle of the field. And if they can really get that guy who can stretch the field, who can make plays after the catch, that's going to be big for them.
Yeah, I mean, just even what you mentioned and what we've already talked about, but just to kind of reset the stage here with the Colts. Obviously, they traded for Carson Wentz. That was great this year. Buckner the year before. But imagine this team, your Colts team, adding either Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry. That would be huge. Adding a Shaq Barrett or a Judon. That would be huge. Or even a Jaden Clowney. I mean, those are guys that are high paid. Yeah.
In my opinion, those are game-changing guys. Those are guys
game-changing guys.
Bring you're in competition with the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't beat them, but it helps you get there. And right now, I feel like they don't have enough playmakers to be able to kind of get into that conversation yet.
Yeah, like you were saying, I mean, I think Ballard's great if he's, working for Microsoft and he's the CFO and he's talking about gigawatts and this and adding percentage points. NFL and sports in particular, it's just one of those industries where you do have to swing for the fences to go for it. I mean, you look at the Bucs. We hired Tom Brady, of course, the greatest of all time, but he was 43. There was a little bit of risk there. How was he going to play with a new team, new system? Obviously, it went well. You've got to, in my opinion, you got to take those home run swings. The Chiefs made a lot of home run swings. All these teams that we've seen with great success, there's got to be a little bit of that risk it for the biscuit. Let me ask you this: Did you name the position? Would you want them to draft a defensive end with the 21st pick, or edge rusher? I should say.
I think I hinted at it earlier. It's kind of tough being at 21, like you said. It's kind of being at 21 is kind of a crapshoot, right? After the first 10 picks, it's a lot of a mixed bag. So when you talk about this edge rusher group, there are not a whole lot of sure things. And sure, you'd like to go into the draft saying, yeah, we're just going to get an edge rusher in round 1. But what happens if that guy's really not worth the number 21 pick? You might be better off going with a left tackle. You might be better off going with a wide receiver, which Chris Ballard won't do. He doesn't draft day 1 wide receivers. But
crazy too.
yeah, I'd like to see them come out. Medical issues concerned, I'd be fine with Jalen Phillips. He's obviously got a big red flag with his medicals, and that might kind of deter the Colts. The guy that I would probably want the most, if he falls, he's probably not going to, is Kwity Paye out of Michigan. I think he's probably the best fit. He's bendy, he's agile. He's as polished as you need him to be able to make an impact right away. He's kind of the guy that I would say is at the top of their board right now. He's gonna be the one that kind of steps into that. He'll compete for that defensive end 1 role on the edge. So. But then, they could also go cornerback. I don't think they would, but they could. It's kind of a need. They need to find somebody to compete with Rocky Sin, who's been up and down in his career. But if I had to guess, it's between edge and left tackle.
I'm going to throw out a crazy suggestion, but these are what I feel. Sometimes you got to make home run plays. Everybody feels late in the first round, mid to late first round, the top 2 running backs are going to be there, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's not going to happen. But I'm talking about throwing crazy – it would not be the craziest thing in the world if the Colts chose one of those 2 running backs and just totally change. You don't like that? See, but here's why.
Not at all. Okay.
You don't like that, but elite running backs, a guy like a Travis Etienne or Najee Harris could change the game flow, could help Carson Wentz out, manage the game, and play a more of a control the clock kind of a game. Because
I would agree with you. I would agree with you if they didn't have Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, in my eyes, is better than both of those guys.
Really?
Yeah, he's a better fit. He's more talented. I think so. And maybe not Najee. Najee's kind of the guy. I like ETN, but I would much rather have Jonathan Taylor's skill set. I think he's a better fit for them. I think he's better equipped to take on a bruising workload.
Wow.
So I think I'm not necessarily in the camp where running back is probably the furthest need for the Colts. And if they took one of those guys, they might burn down Lucas Oil Stadium.
They would be so you guys would be that upset because you feel you guys have the running back position buttoned up.
Oh yeah, easily. Running back is a very proud position right now in Indy. Jonathan Taylor, I don't want to say he struggled in the beginning, even though his numbers might suggest that. He was steadily making progress, and then he hit the bye week, and then he had this 3-game rut where it was just absolutely brutal. But from week 11 on, he was the best running back not named Derrick Henry, and maybe Dalvin Cook.
Wow.
So if they took a running back in the first round, I would be very surprised, and I would come onto the show. I would come back onto the show, and I'll be like, "You're right. I was completely wrong," but I cannot see that happening. They have so many other, and you never want to draft based on need, right? And that's kind of your point, right?
Right.
It would boost the offense, but that is so far down the list that I don't even think they're not even considering a running back in the first 2 rounds of the draft.
You also have to remember, Preston, this is the team that traded a first-round pick for Trent Richardson.
Trent Richardson. Yeah.
Okay,
so
but there's a difference between third overall and 21st. I'm just saying. Look, I know it's crazy, and I agree with everything you're saying. I think it is crazy. However, the goal is to win games. It's not to. The game is changing more often. I get it. You need defense. You need edge rushers. But if there's not a corner there that's super elite, if there's not an edge rusher there that's super elite, these 2 running backs that are coming out are super elite. You partner him with Taylor, so you get a Najee Harris who's like a Derrick Henry type with Taylor. I'm just saying, if you're able to run for 150 yards a game, you control the game, you control the flow. And I can understand the Colts fans will be angry, but at the end of the day, you win 10, 11, 12 games.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens here.
I would say that their biggest concern is boosting the passing game. They've shown that they can get by with controlling the clock, controlling the line of scrimmage with the run game, and it works to a degree. But their ceiling is so much capped. It's so capped in terms of because they haven't had that passing game really. So if they take a running back, man,
You would go crazy.
Oh, Indy would burn down.
Burn down the stadium. Well, we don't want to burn that.
Absolutely.
We're going to get James in here in a minute, but yeah, last thing, Kevin, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time. Any parting words before we go to James here?
No, what's up, James? How you doing, man?
What's up, man? How you doing, man? Good to see,
Good to see you.
A fellow wire site editor on here.
Absolutely.
Oh, you guys know each other?
Oh yeah,
a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we came on the network. We came in the network about the same time. So
oh man.
Yeah, we've been in the AFC South together.
I thought you guys looked like brothers. I didn't, now that I think about it. You guys are twins. That's great, man. That's great. Well, Kevin, if you don't mind us hanging around a couple minutes, if you want to, or if you got to go, we're going to get into some. We're going to get into some Jacksonville Jaguars. So let's give a proper introduction for James Johnson here, the writer for the Jaguars Wire. You guys are old friends, brothers, as it appears, might be brothers. So tell us what is going on with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the #1 overall pick. Are you excited being a Jaguars fan, James, or are you nervous and ready to throw up, hoping they don't screw it up?
No, I think for the first time, and I probably shouldn't say this, but because the moment I speak on it, then something else will happen. But I think for the first time, we're feeling pretty confident that they're going to take Trevor Lawrence. And I mean, like for the Jaguars, if there ever was a year to get the first overall pick, this was it, right?
Right.
To get Trevor Lawrence. And, it kind of goes to show you how hard it is to acquire the first overall pick, because the Jaguars have been around for 26 years. And as bad as they've been through a lot of that time, they still haven't been able to quite get the first overall pick. I mean, and I guess it kind of worked out that they got it this year when Trevor Lawrence entered the draft. But I mean, they're pretty confident in the city of Jacksonville that that's the direction that the Jags will go in. We've heard Urban Meyer say it himself. And I mean, like, even before then, it was pretty clear that that was the direction they were going in. Shad Khan, like, the first thing he spoke on in the conference he had after the season was the Jaguars need a franchise quarterback. And then after that, you hear the Mel Kipers of the world, the Todd McShays of the world saying the only reason that Urban Meyer is going to Jacksonville is for, Trevor Lawrence. And, I don't want to go that far with it, is to say like that's the only reason or whatever the case may be, because he does have a connection with that region of Florida as well. But you have to think like if you put it on a pie scale, you would have to think that's like 80% of the reason he's going there. So
hey, James, I hate to jump in here. Was that okay? Yeah. Is that good? It looks like I got cleared up there. Okay, good. No, I had a little bit of I wasn't sure whose microphone that was, but it looks like we got cleaned up there with the I want to make sure we were coming through clear. So go ahead, James, finish your thoughts. I'm sorry.
But yeah. But with Urban Meyer coming to Jacksonville, he's been pretty transparent about wanting Trevor Lawrence. I mean, how many times have we seen somebody go on the field during the quarterback's workout? Like, that's just rare. So that being said, I mean, like, he's always indicated that he's wanted, and people have always been able to see that he's wanted Trevor Lawrence. And when April that date on April comes, man, like, it can't come soon enough, because the people of Jacksonville have waited long for this time to get a quarterback of Trevor Lawrence's magnitude.
Absolutely. All right, let's really quickly go to Kevin, and let's get your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. Do you feel confident? Because everybody you've had the back-to-back guys. You've had the Andrew Luck. You've had Peyton Manning. These, that every scout agrees that these are the elite guys. Do you think Trevor Lawrence is going to be as good as those guys?
It's hard. It's hard to say, but I would say the probability is yes. I mean, is he going to be Peyton Manning? That's really hard to say. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But Trevor Lawrence is probably one of the, if not the best quarterback prospects of all time. So I feel like I kind of agree with Jay. It's kind of an easy pick for them. They've had this one locked in. Urban Meyer knew what he was getting into when he arrived in Jacksonville. So I think passing over Trevor Lawrence because he might not hit a ceiling of Peyton Manning or Dan Marino or John Elway, I think passing on him for that would be wrong. So I think the pick is easy. I think he takes Trevor Lawrence school. He's shown he can be consistent. He's one of the best throwers to ever come out of college. He can create with his feet. So the pick is easy for me.
Absolutely. Cam, do you want to jump in here and ask James a question on Jacksonville?
Yeah, James, I noticed you guys signed C.J. Beathard last week. And so what does that mean for Gardner Minshew? Is he done there? Is he going to get cut? Do you see him getting traded? So, I mean, because I'm just curious, what do you see happening with Gardner Minshew from here?
Yeah, well, Beathard has, I think it's 2.7 or 2.5 million guaranteed in his contract. So I think, wow, that's not an astronomical number, especially for the Jags who led the league in salary cap. I do think that's kind of telling, that figure is there, and that they might be trying to move on from Gardner Minshew. Now, me personally, I was cool with keeping him, but I understand it. But it's rare that you get a young man that has put together the amount of starts he has in 2 years at under 24 years of age, whatever the case may be. For that reason, I was cool with keeping him. But at the same time, just based off of what we know about Gardner Minshew, his personality, you have to wonder, can Gardner Minshew be on a team with Trevor Lawrence, with Gardner Minshew's mentality, in the sense that Gardner Minshew, just from what we've seen, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but he's competitive. He believes that he should be the guy, the number one guy on the field, and so on and so forth. So that kind of concerns me as well, just putting those two in the same locker room together or the same quarterback room together. So with that being said, though, I think, it's only a matter of time before they probably trade him. It was looking like maybe just off of speculation was San Francisco, but San Francisco, they just blew everybody's socks away recently with the moves they made in terms of moving up in the draft or moving down in the draft order, however you want to put it. But that being said, though, I don't think it's long before, they probably unload Gardner Minshew. I think like a 4th round pick is about acceptable, maybe a 5th round pick. I mean, he was drafted in the 6th. But 4th to 5th round is probably what you're looking at. Nick Foles, we traded him for a 4th, so that's about the compensation you might want to get if you're going to unload Gardner Minshew.
James, you bring up a lot of great points because Cam, slow down, Cam. I know Cam's excited. He loves Gardner Minshew. You don't have to sell. He loves he keeps telling me the mustache and the hair and all these weird all these things that have nothing to do with football. Look, I just think he's better than Cam Newton. Gardner Minshew's a cool guy and everything, but you bring up some great points, James, because what's interesting is Trevor Lawrence he's one of the best prospects in many, many years. He checks every box, 6'6", 225, all these great things. But he is kind of a very quiet, humble guy, which is rare for a guy of his stature. And Gardner Minshew with the mustache, he's just a polarizing guy with the memes and everything else. I didn't even think about that element, that because he's such a big personality and he was the starter and back and forth, that could mix things up a little bit in the room. Are you, like you said, what do you think about that, James?
He's super competitive. You hear the stories about him, right? Like the story of, so he could stay in college one more year, I think it was, or get one more year eligibility in college where he tried to break his hand. You heard of that story. And then there's the story of him. He actually jacked his hand up last year and played on it, played with the hand messed up. And we all know that's a vital part of your body if you're playing the quarterback position. Like you literally cannot go out there and play without a hand. But he tried. And again, this is not knocking Gardner Minshew. This is more so saying that this young man, he understands what kind of opportunity he got as a 6th round pick and what kind of a chance opportunity of a lifetime that he had that he didn't want to relinquish. But at the same time, it also tells you some things that, that makes you wonder, can he coexist in a locker room with Trevor Lawrence? Not that he's been combative or he's been an issue for the Jags locker room, but he really does feel like he should be on the field. And, if a team comes with a conversation, maybe you trade him off and send him somewhere where he maybe can get on the field. But, it's kind of just hard to say where that would be right now. But time will tell. And that's one of them. I thought of that. And we'll see where he ends up.
James, I want to ask you, and we can get the panel's take on this too. You guys had the most money in salary cap, over $75 million, and much like Indy and some of the other teams, Green Bay, you guys didn't really go buck wild about that. And there was rumors that maybe, Urban Meyer didn't quite understand the legal tampering. There was rumors about that. He didn't quite totally grasp the concept. He got a little upset about that. Are you concerned that you guys didn't kind of swing for the – because I would have thought you guys would have dipped in and taken a lot of the guys that the Patriots ended up taking.
I will say it was a little disappointing. Not necessarily concerned because they had 11 draft picks. They have 10 now. They used one of them in free agency. That was part of the moves that they made. They traded for Malcolm Brown. And they got a nose tackle in here. Well, I mean, he'll probably be in the rotation when looking at how Joe Cullen will operate with this defense. But I don't know if I want to say concerned, but yeah, like when you have that kind of money, and you're trying to improve from 1-15, like for me, the biggest question mark and the biggest miss for me was missing out on the tight ends. Like Jonnu Smith, who was in the division, Hunter Henry. Because the thing is, you can't, in my opinion, go into the draft thinking that you're going to get the answer at tight end out of the draft, because we've seen it. Typically, in the first 2 years or so, tight ends struggle in the draft. It is what it is. They don't put up numbers like that. You're looking at best at a guy that's probably going to give you 300 yards. Even if you want to make the argument for somebody like Kyle Pitts, who's phenomenal. Love Kyle Pitts to death. I love the film I've seen on him. But still, even if you want to get him, which would take you trading up compensation, by the way, a lot of compensation where the Jags are, like it's going to be difficult to get him. So you're looking at a guy like, like Pat Frymouth, Brevin Jordan or something like that. And Pat, the thing about Pat is he has his position coach on the actual staff of Jacksonville right now. So a lot of people have really pinpointed him as the guy that they'll probably end up with. We'll see. But either way, whoever they end up with is probably not going to give them a lot of production as a rookie. So that was the disappointing part about free agency is, at a position that the Jaguars have struggled at mightily, by the way, since losing Mercedes Lewis, that was the one that you probably needed to address by getting a veteran, and they weren't able to do so. And I mean, as a matter of fact, the Patriots got both of those guys that I mentioned. And, I think
those damn Patriots.
They're always getting everybody's way, right? But yeah, that's just telling to me that the Patriots were able to get those guys over not just the Jaguars, but the rest of the league in general. But when you look at it from the Jags perspective, you had the most salary cap in the whole league. Like what's the excuse? But, here we are. And, they'll probably have to address that position in particular in free agency.
Let's get Kevin back in here before we kind of wrap things up a couple more minutes. Kevin, you want any take on that or?
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, James is the guy to go to for the Jaguars, but I'd probably agree. You see a team like that who's they've got so much cap space, you kind of expect them to make some moves. I did love the Marvin Jones signing. I think that's going to be great for Trevor Lawrence or whoever. I guess you can say whatever quarterback they bring in, but it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. So yeah. I like that. Have a veteran guy in there. And then I also did like the Shaquille Griffin signing. I think Shaquille Griffin's a good cornerback. He can win with the press. He can win the line of the scrimmage. So I like that. He's still young enough to develop. So I didn't hate the free agency, but you do kind of get a little disappointed when the team has so much cap space. I mean, it's the same thing with the Colts. Colts had so much cap space and they don't make any moves. So people start to get disappointed. But most of the time, especially when you have you got a new head coach, you're going to have a new quarterback. You got to take kind of a long-term approach with it. And you can get in some sticky situations when it comes to free agency.
The one thing I do want to say real quick, James, before we go back to you, I do want to say this real quick. The Jags better get an O-line, because they don't want him to end up injured like Joe Burrow was last year. Andrew Luck beat up before that. We've seen too many of these first and second overall picks just get absolutely steamrolled with poor offensive line. So we know it's going to be Trevor Lawrence unless something crazy apocalyptic happens. But James, do you agree that your team, after you pick Lawrence, you got to just load up that O-line with draft picks?
Well, I actually think, like, in a way, they're designed to protect him. And what I mean by that is James Robinson was fifth in rushing last year as an undrafted rookie. And, of course, you don't want to give James Robinson the same load you gave him last year, right? I think he was, like, the leader in running back carry percentage, even over Derrick Henry. But, they brought in Carlos Hyde, another guy in free agency to help him, to help alleviate that load off of him. And also they it sounds like just how they've been talking. They want to get a speed threat in the draft at running back. But yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, like James Robinson is a good way to protect Trevor Lawrence. Pass protection, yeah, you have concerns there, this, that, and the other. But I think what Urban Meyer, his mindset, it seems like at least, is that he's really confident in the staff that he's built. And, he's putting a lot in George Warhop to help Cam Robinson improve as a left tackle. They franchise tagged him. They also, just have faith in a lot of those guys because they're just younger, especially on the perimeter. Juwan Taylor, they just drafted him in the second round like 2 years ago. So like the verdict's still out on him. So I would not be shocked if they didn't get a offensive lineman in the first 3 rounds, honestly. Just based on
So you feel confident that the Jaguars offensive line is at least good enough or serviceable?
Serviceable, I would say, yes, especially in the run game. Again, because like James Robinson was 5th in rushing. And again, we're talking about an undrafted young man here, by the way. And I think like what also can kind of help you gauge your confidence in that offensive line is, look, this team, and this is the regime before, this team willingly let Leonard Fournette go. And, they just waived him willingly. And that's because they probably knew what they had in James Robinson and how good of a running back he is. And I mean, I think this is something Kevin can kind of speak on too, because, they have Jonathan Cooper, and, that does take the burden off of a quarterback. And even in, just looking within the division with Tennessee, what Derrick Henry does for Tannehill, so from that perspective, we'll see like how well they can protect Trevor Lawrence, but they do at least have the run game to protect him. The big question mark is, do they have the pass protection to protect him?
That's the key, the pass protection. That's my concern. Cam, did you want to jump in here real quick?
James, just tell me what happened, because just 3-4 years ago, you guys are in the AFC Championship game. I'll be the first to admit you should have won that game. As a Patriots fan, we got lucky. You should have won that game. You got Ramsey, Bouye, Miles Jack, Ngakoue. On offense, you got Fournette and Robinson. You just needed a slight upgraded quarterback from Bortles, and you look like you're set up for a great run. What happened?
Well, the way I've always charted it is a majority of it was Tom Coughlin, and a majority of it was also the mix of personalities in the locker room is what it was. Tom Coughlin, as we all have seen, he's not built to coexist with the modern day NFL player. And when you have that in your, when you have that in, because I mean, look, that I don't find it funny that they went to somebody in Urban Meyer, who is a specialist with college players, who is a player's coach to the T, after having Tom Coughlin in that building. Like that goes to show you like that they felt like they made a mistake by bringing Tom Coughlin in the building. And, he had friction with several key members on that team. And not only that, but, like he didn't extend several key members on that team that needed the Jalen Ramseys of the world. I think Miles Jack was one of them that got extended, but, he was one of the rarities, and then again, going back to what I was saying, like, not to say they had a lot of bad people in their locker room. They just didn't have the right mix of personality.
They had some rough, kind of rambunctious guys with Ramsey and Fournette. I mean, they had some guys with some strong personalities. So you feel Tom Coughlin's kind of stern, strict, old school, kind of just rough style, just did not adapt well to this young Jacksonville team.
Exactly. I mean, you're looking at, last year they were literally the youngest team in football. I think their age average was like 24.9 or something like that. So like it's a bunch of kids versus Tom Coughlin basically. And of course that's not going to work because Tom Coughlin is just old school to the T. And we're seeing it now that the league is moving more towards being a players league.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of the wire, Bucks wire, Patriots wire, Colts wire, all the wires on. So I want to let you guys know before we wrap this up here, we'll let everybody say their final piece here on everything. But we're doing a week before the draft, we're doing a mock draft, and our goal is to get all 32 teams represented. So we've got close to about half represented, like 15, 16. So we need you guys to put the feelers out on your Twitter and Slack and everything and get everybody on. Obviously, James, unless something crazy happens here, you would be first. You'd be first on deck for the Jaguars. So would you guys cool with that?
Absolutely, count me in.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Perfect.
I mean, that's if, like the excitement doesn't overwhelm me. But yeah, I'm definitely
Well, I will. If the excitement doesn't overwhelm me, it is a family-friendly show there, James. So let's keep it together. But no, I can understand that, man. You might be popping bottles of champagne or beer or Stone Cold Steve Austin, whatever. That might be a little fun and exciting, with the green screen and everything. And so yeah, that'll be cool. So yeah, we want to get everybody on in the last take. So we'll kind of go. Just kind of last final thoughts with Kevin on everything, and then we'll kind of finish up with James.
No, I'm good. I appreciate you guys bringing me on, the opportunity to talk some Colts. So
excellent.
Be looking forward to seeing you during the draft.
Excellent. Absolutely appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin. James, last word, and make sure everybody likes and subscribes because this will be on YouTube. So we'll see how many views we get, maybe millions and millions, who knows. So James, final thoughts here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for introducing me and Kevin through video chat for the first time, because all of the interactions we've had have been
just been through Slack and Twitter.
Yeah, Slack.
Oh, wow.
So that being said, I mean, it was nice to come on and meet Kevin and meet everybody in general. Had a good time. You can follow all of my content at jaguarswire.usatoday.com. The Believe in Jags podcast is my podcast by the Believe in Jaguars, the Believe Network, with Phil Smith. Shout outs to him as well. And you could follow all of that information. You can find it in my Twitter bio. It's at sportsgrind_done. Everything's pretty much there for people to check out, examine this, that, and the other.
Perfect. Tell all your wire guys to come on the podcast, Smash Mouth Sports. I'm Preston. That's Cam Vieira. And this wraps up the show. Thanks again, guys. Great takes. Appreciate it.
Thank you.